Universally, the Jews stood up in opposition. They looked at Zionism as just like reform. It is construing, misrepresenting what Judaism is, and what it's doing is uprooting from a Jewish youth and from everybody, but from the Jewish youth especially, what they should be aspiring for, what their life should be, to serve God. Instead, now all of a sudden they want you to look and strive and to the creation of a state and build the state of Israel. And that is their whole theme. That our essence is that we should have, you should be loyal to the state of Israel. And if not, you're considered as a traitor to the Jewish people. How can you be a traitor to the Jewish people if you don't support this our land, our home? It's our, they call it our insurance policy. Why? Because instead of what we say, when everything happens is from the hands of God, and God is all powerful. So if God forbid there's a decree against Jews or whatever, we don't say that what we should do is take up guns and have a land. That's not the solution, because everything is in the hands of God. We pray to God, and He gives us directions of how we should try to alleviate and to end the suffering. We should do prayer, repent, and then approach the ones who are oppressing the Jews and plead with them that they should stop oppressing them. That's the way we were taught in the Torah. Jacob, when his brother, wanted to kill him, he went and he brought him presents, and he approached him. First he prayed to God. That's what we're taught, that we should, how a Jew has to live his life, and it has not changed. As I say, the Torah has not changed. It's a blueprint. So when we believe, even by Hitler, his name should be obliterated. Even by Hitler, the rabbis, the Orthodox rabbis, wanted to approach him, and they attempted. They made that they wanted to approach, and they were thwarted with the efforts by the Zionist leadership, that they wanted to plead that he should not kill the Jews and so forth, and see what his problem is with the Jews and so forth. But Zionists agitated Hitler. There was Stephen Weiss, the Reform rabbi in New York, and he declared a boycott against Hitler. And Hitler said, "I take up a challenge." So the Jewish approach is Tower suffering is always, to approach, appeal, to placate, and so forth. But while Zionism teaches the opposite, our approach is never again. That's a Zionist, JDL. Never again. We're going to always stand up, and then we don't believe in that whole concept. One of our rabbis, Rabbi Weissmandl of blessed memory, his name I will mention a few times with God's help, because he was one of the great rabbis at the time of the Holocaust, and he was a brilliant scholar. He was from Hungary, and he made efforts almost at the cost of his life to save Jews when Jews were being murdered in Poland and Ukraine already. They would have been murdered. He went and secretly met with Eichmann's, who was the one who was the heads of the concentration camps, and he was killed in the Nuremberg, and he met with his underlings or whatever, and he secretly made meetings that he said the Nazis were going to enter Hungary, and a portion of Slovakia was not killed yet. And he said, "Look, I'll buy off the Jews. You're desperate." It's 1944, 1945. He said, "You're desperate for money. I mean, you're desperate because you're being wiped out. The writing's on the wall. I'll buy the Jews off from you. Instead of your whole mission should be to kill Jews when you go in. Sell me the Jews. Sell us the Jews." And for like a time of a month's period, they stopped killing Jews in Auschwitz, because he had this deal going with them. He was supposed to bring a massive amount of money. He went and he approached the Zionist organizations, which were very rich, and they told him they would help him. And then it was later, it came out that they thwarted his efforts. They stopped, and they wrote, and he wrote a book. It's called Min HaMeitzar, from the depth of suffering. And he writes about how they got the letters. The letters are there that they said the more the Jewish blood is spilled, the more, it says, to the conqueror goes the spoils. So, being that they saw that the Western world is going to win the war, they're going to divide the spoils, the lands. They said the more Jewish blood is spilled, the more land they will get. And that was their theme. Rak bedam tiyulanu, it's only with blood will we get the land. That was one of their quotes of the Zionist leadership. We have that all, by the way. We put out a book called Traditional Torah Opposition to Zionism, which is historical documents. It's a compilation of the rabbis, declarations, letters that they wrote before World War II, during World War II, and then we have also writings of the Zionists where they condemn themselves, they prove how against Judaism they were, and their hypocrisy and their opposition to Judaism, and by the Holocaust, what they did. And we have other books called Holocaust Victim Accused, the Holocaust Victim Accused, which is, I don't know if it's in print still, we have that, but you can definitely, I believe, if you come to our site, you can see it on nkusa.org. And this was a compilation by Rabbi Moshe Schoenfeld. Moshe Schoenfeld is interesting. He was there was Dr. Solomon Schoenfeld, who served in the Holocaust as the chairman of the Rescue Committee, founded by the Chief Rabbi of Palestine. And he writes this, which I will talk about, that he put an article. He wrote a whole book, and he wrote about the issue what the Zionists did. But he put an article. There's an article of him in the Times of London, June 6, 1961, where he writes about the fact that the recent reports of the Eichmann trial has considerable evidence tending to show that His Majesty's government, the English government, was largely indifferent and unwilling to take action in defense of the European Jews who were being massacred daily by the Nazis. And he says, and this was in spite of the efforts by Zionist leaders to persuade the British Foreign Office to rouse itself into action on behalf of the victims, which is the Zionists' always accusation against people that they were that they were silent, the world was silent. And he says, my experience, and he was the chairman of the Rescue Committee founded by the Chief Rabbi of Britain. And he wrote, my experience in 1942-1943 was wholly in favor of British readiness to help openly, constructively, and totally. And this readiness was met with opposition. Yes, I go on? Yeah, it was met, and this readiness for the British government to help was met with opposition from Zionist leaders who insisted on rescue to Palestine. In other words, what the Zionists said was, he said it was, it's a whole article. Basically, when Jews were being murdered en masse. So in 1942, the United Nations, both the House of Parliament. And the House of Lords, he said both the House made a declaration on December 17, 1942, because it started like 1940, 1941, and in consultation with the Dominion government of India to declare its readiness to find temporary refuge in its territories under its control for endangered persons who are able to leave these countries. In other words, they can escape from under the tentacles of the Nazis. They're ready to take them into India. And he goes on and on, the different lessons. As a result of widespread concern, a total of 277 parliamentary signatories of all parties signed on to this. While the parliamentary motion was gathering momentum, voices of dissent was heard from the Zionists. They said, why not Palestine? In other words, they want these Jews to be sent to Palestine. Of course, the answer was that there was problems in Palestine. There was already this tumult, the agitation between the Arabs, and Britain was under British mandate. They didn't want this now. They had enough problems over there. But they were ready to help save the Jews. At the parliamentary meeting held on January 27, 1943, when the next steps were being energetically pursued by over 100 MPs and lords, a spokesman for the Zionists announced that the Jews would oppose the motion on the grounds of its omitting to refer to Palestine. So basically, even the promoters exclaimed in desperation, if the Jews cannot agree amongst themselves, how can we help? And it died in the motion. I'm just giving one example. This is scandalous. And Rabbi Weissmandl, did a book called Perfidy by Ben Hecht. maybe you've heard of it. Basically, Rabbi Weissmandl made these connections, and he was. They once they sent him, they caught him, they arrested him, and so with the Nazis, he would put his life on edge, and he went to save the Jews, and he made this agreement that they would not kill the Jews of Hungary, and a third of Slovakia that was still there. And he was only supposed to bring the money that was required for this, and they strung him on, the Zionists, till they saw that his agents, the people that he sent, should get arrested. The whole story, what happened to them, and the whole thing died. And then he got later the papers that they didn't want to save the Jews. It's a long story. I can't go into all these details, but what happened. But this is a fact, and this is one of many facts how the Zionists thwarted the efforts. More interesting that they colluded with the Nazis at the beginning, because the Nazis wanted the Jews out. The Zionists wanted the Jews out and into Palestine. So they worked together. When the Nazis closed all Jewish newspapers, the Zionist newspapers remained open. They worked together. Then the Zionists turned around and decided to work against them. Maybe they weren't working together properly, the Zionists with the Nazis or whatever, where it stopped along the line, and they became their opposers and so forth. But instead of listening to the rabbis, they kept on thwarting the efforts of the rabbis to use the Jewish process, and they thwarted the efforts of saving Jews. They were basically, my grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father's parents were in Hungary. My father-in-law's parents, he passed away a few years ago, he was actually in Auschwitz. And he used to wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares and so forth. I mean, that's everybody who went through it. I lived with that. I was born in '56. I lived with the people who survived, and all these Jews have to thank the Zionists why their families basically were killed, because Rabbi Weissmandl had made a deal with Eichmann's henchmen, and they were going to stop to kill the Jews because they were desperate. It was in 1944, 1945 when they invaded Hungary and so forth, and it wouldn't have happened. That's when they went into Hungary. That's a fact that I can tell you. 1944, yeah, yeah, because I know, because that's when all the Jews were killed, and all my relatives and our communities and so forth. This is a fact. And the third of Slovakia, and that could have been stopped if it wouldn't have been for the intervention of the Zionists and so forth. There's a lot more. We have a lot more. There's a documentary. It was called Sugihari about Japan. Somebody put out some time ago. Maybe you've seen it. Sugihari. It's about a diplomat from Japan, who I believe from Japan, and he wanted to save Jews. And basically, Japan was willing to take the Jews in because they had a very good history of Jews. Because the Russian-Japanese war, they were going to lose Japan, and a Jewish fellow, Levi or Levine, saved them. Bankrolled. He was some banker or something. He bankrolled them and helped them. They had a very good. So they said, if you're throwing out the Jews, very good, we'll take them. They had a good history of the Jews. So they went to visit the Stephen Weiss, and this is in that documentary, Sugihari. You can look up. It's a documentary, and he went to him, and he grabbed these guys from Japan who came. They went. Who could they go to? So they went to this leading Reform rabbi, the Stephen Weiss. He wasn't an Orthodox, and they decided to approach him and said that we're ready to take in the Jews. He grabbed them by the collar and threw them out. I'm just giving you another example. There's a lot more than that.
Okay.
There's actually a book called 51 Documents from Lenny Brenner. He actually worked a little bit. We had sent him on a mission from the Ture Karta. He's not from an Orthodox community, whatever. They had sent him on a mission for something, because I met with him once and he told me this. But in that, he even has, there was Life magazine, which is very famous here, and they had an interview that they made with Eichmann. His name should be obliterated when he was imprisoned in Nuremberg, and he spoke about this. There's like series of three segments of that they had in interviews with Eichmann, and which they confirmed this. They had actually worked with the Nazis, with the Zionists. This is a fact, and it should be, like I say, all these is breathtaking. I mean, it's so scandalous that there's no words. Well, while the Zionists one of their mainstays, one of their main issues is to use the Holocaust. They had Yad Vashem. They used the Holocaust as a guilt ride that people should, that they were silent during Hitler, during the Holocaust, and therefore you should be supportive of the state of Israel. And they tried to fuse together our suffering of the Holocaust with that you should therefore support the state of Israel. It's just, again, just like Zionism in the spirituality of it is the greatest nemesis, is the ruination, God forbid, of what Judaism is, of what the Jewish nation is, and so forth. It's turning on its head, rebelling directly against God. In the physical aspect of it, it's the same thing. They took the Holocaust. They were worked, and they were, the hands are covered in blood of Jews during the Holocaust. And there's, like I say, much writing of this, the facts, what happened during the Holocaust. Like I say, my grandparents, this is a fact. This is Rabbi Weissmandl. We have many, my children are students of his schools. There's schools spread out called Nitra. Nitra was a town, I believe, in Hungary or Romania. I think Hungary, basically. And and he was the Nitra rabbi, was the father-in-law of this Rabbi Weissmandl, and so when he came to the United States, he was able to escape, this Rabbi Weissmandl. Eventually he was arrested, and he escaped from one of the box carts that was taking them to Auschwitz, or one of the concentration camps. He had like a saw with him. He had put into his shoe or something it's called, and he was able to cut out a piece of wood, and he jumped off the train. He was able to escape miraculously. He came to the United States, and he opened the school system, and then his students and later their students. My father-in-law studied there. He took together people. He saved, he was able to save some of the children, and then he opened like a little community here in Westchester called it's called Nitra, a little community next to Mount Kisco in Westchester. And over there, so he put out a lot of great scholars and rabbis, and they opened other schools and spread all over, like here in Muncie and other areas in New York. And so my students, some of my children learned in some of their schools. Basically, my father-in-law. But this was not only a credible rabbi, but he had documents. He also had spoken to the ambassador, the diplomat from Germany, who said that he went to Hitler, and they reported on what Stephen Weiss said, that I'm going to boycott the Nazis, I'm going to boycott Hitler. And Hitler, he said, enraged, threw himself onto the rug and bit the carpet. He was so mad. He said, the Jews are going to make a fight with me. I will show them what I can do. Basically, I will destroy them. And the Jewish rabbis, on the contrary, were trying to work the way Judaism works, to appease them and find out what is bothering them and so forth. And and again, we're not in any way condoning or in any manner making less the crime of the Nazis. I mean, this is the devil themselves, but and they will be punished exactly by God. But unfortunately, the Zionists had a hand, basically, in the being able to accomplish what the Nazis did, and spiritually also they had. We were warned by the Almighty, if we will try to leave exile, we will be punished and hunted like animals. Yeah, Yitzchak Greenbaum, who was the chairperson of the Jewish Agency's Rescue Committee, and I'm quoting him. This is The Days of Holocaust and Destruction by Yitzchak Greenbaum. He wrote, "When they asked me, couldn't you give money out of the United Jewish Appeal Funds for the rescues of Jews in Europe? I said no. And I said again, no. One should resist this wave which pushes the Zionist activities to secondary importance." Can you imagine that? Your hair stands up when you see this. They saw Jews are being murdered, millions of Jews. In the response of the plea of Rabbi Yitzchak Itzhemel Levine, a leader of the ultra-Orthodox Agudas Yisrael, who stated, quote, "Take the Jewish National Fund money. Won't you halt the work in Palestine during such a period?" He pleaded with them from another organization. He said, "Won't you halt the work of Zionists and during such a period when they are murdering and slaughtering Jews by the hundreds of thousands, even millions? Don't establish new settlements. Take the money for those needs to save Jews." Greenbaum responded on January 18, 1943, quote, Let them say that I am anti-Semitic. Let them say what they want. I will not demand that the Jewish agency allocate the sum of 300,000 or 100,000 pounds sterling to help European Jewry. And I think whoever demands such a thing is performing an anti-Zionist act. I mean, these words are not, it's unfathomable. There's no words for this. I mean, they're constantly accusing people of being anti-Semitic and about the Holocaust, the Holocaust, the Holocaust. They should be hiding in holes from shame. I'm going to quote Chaim Weissmandl. Chaim Weissmandl had a meeting. This is in 1937, and I think it's 1937 because he quote before he says in London in 1937, but I'm quoting him. But this is a famous quote that's brought down in the Jewish press and many Zionist papers, and this is what he said. They had a meeting, he wrote, and this is quoted in the Jewish press, October 1802. It's a real Zionist paper, but it's many other places where it's from. Palestine cannot absorb the Jews of Europe. We want only the best of Jewish youth to come to us. We want only the educated to enter Palestine for the purpose of increasing its culture. The other Jews will have to stay where they are and face whatever fate awaits them. This is in 1930 when Jews were being murdered, starting to be murdered by the Nazis. And so they had a meeting amongst the Zionists. So he said, we don't want all these Jews like me to come. We want only the educated to enter Palestine for the purpose of increasing its culture. The other Jews will have to stay where they are and face whatever fate awaits them. These millions of Jews are dust on the wheels of history and may have to be blown away. We don't want them pouring into Palestine. We don't want Tel Aviv to become another low-grade ghetto. This is the first president of the state of Israel, Chaim Weissmandl. In other words, let the Jews be murdered by the millions, but don't pour in. He doesn't mean because he didn't want us there. He didn't want us to undermine his heretic state of Israel, which he knew that's what will happen. And that's why they're suffering from our Jews over there. They don't want that. They don't want the Arabs, and they don't want me. So this is what they were ready to do. Let them die. We have many more such quotes. We had, like I said, one cow is worth more. One goat here. I'm quoting many of such. Rabbi Weissmandl quotes one of their leaders. He says, "One goat in the land of Israel is more important than the entire Jewish community in Europe." I mean, just words that shouldn't be repeated. And there's the one cow. It says there's another quote from their leaders. Again, it was a common phrase, but just like they say, a land without a people. One cow in Jerusalem is more than the. There's many such different quotes. Each one is so repugnant. It's not worth. They have the quotes of that was Chaim Weissmandl. I'll just speaking of their leaders. I'll just quote Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl, in his own diary, page 14. The way to solve the problem of anti-Semitism. Now remember, he was the time of the Dreyfus trial and so forth. So the way to solve the problem of anti-Semitism is to speak to the head priest of Vienna, to get an appointment with the Pope, to make a mass conversion of all the Jews of Austria to Catholicism. It should be done on a Sunday, in the middle of the day, with music and pride publicly. We are the last generation that held on to the faith of our forefathers. The conversion would be in St. Stephen's Cathedral. Imagine, he just did it as a passing statement. He thought it should be music and pride publicly. They proudly dropping the religion. This is not Judaism. This is a nationalism that they cop the name Judaism, in order to gain legitimacy and to be able to form their state. So they're using, maliciously, unacceptably using my religion as a form. They're using my religion as a form to legitimize and to stifle dissent against their occupation of the land of Palestine.